Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Hail to Michigan podcast. I'm your host, Ronnie Harder, and today I am joined by my two co-hosts, Contown and Matt. Contown, how are you today?
Doing good, Ronnie. Trying to get through the last of this August heat, and then September's football. It's going to be here
Yes,
before we
sir.
know it. Can't wait.
We're 10 days away? I think I saw that earlier today, so
Yep.
super excited for the season to start. It's just coming up next Saturday, so it'll fill our dopamine for the lack of football for the past 7 months. So, Matt, how are you?
I'm doing good. I got some baseball to finish up. I'm a Reds fan, so we got some exciting baseball still going on for the next 10 days, and then we'll get started with the season. I'm excited.
How do you feel about Nick Castellanos opting out of his deal after the year?
That was pretty obvious when the contract was written that he was going to go test the market, especially if he played well like they expected him to. And in Cincinnati, he's going to get probably a huge deal, maybe still from the Reds, but
hopefully. I mean, I don't know who else the Reds really have. I mean, Jonathan India is a really talented player. Is Nick Senzel still playing?
Yeah, when he's healthy.
When he's healthy, okay, gotcha. So a little bit of disappointment, but not really his fault. Votto's still there. Pretty decent starting staff, but I think the bullpen has a lot to figure out.
Oh, yeah. Yep, that's the nightly thing. Can the bullpen get through it?
That's what happens when you trade away your best reliever for, nothing?
Yeah, they basically cost cut two of their top relievers from last year and really didn't do anything until the trade deadline this year to acquire anything new. But they've got two big prospects that are starters that will come up.
I like Hunter Green. So.
Yeah, Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo are hopefully going to help the bullpen here in about 6 days. Not that I'm counting.
Well, look, if they continue to struggle, you can come hop on the Tigers bandwagon when Mize, Manning, and Scooble's leading the way, and Torkelson and Riley Green and whoever else is taking us to the World Series next year. So
Carlos Correa.
Yeah, Carlos Correa at shortstop. Exactly.
Hey, I'm like right in the middle of Detroit and Cincinnati, so
there you go.
That would be probably my second team if I had to pick one. But
yeah, you have
whichever way the wind is blowing that year.
Yeah,
exactly. Yep.
Yeah,
it just depends.
When I was younger, it was definitely Cleveland, the Indians, or the Guardians.
The Guardians, Matt. Come on now.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, today's episode, we're going to get into our offensive and defensive MVPs for Michigan. And then we're going to go do something a little bit different. We're going to look into the national picture and pick our 4 playoff teams and then pick our sleeper team for the year. Just a team that, nobody really expects to do too well this year, but somebody that can make a New Year's Six Bowl, maybe even fight for a playoff spot. You never know. But Content, we'll start with you. We'll start off with these offensive and defensive MVPs. Tell us who you got, and just tell us why.
So on offense, I'm going to go with someone who's not an unknown and not new to being an important piece of the offense, but maybe not the most obvious choice. I think for my offensive MVP, I'm going to have Cornelius Johnson. I think this offense, the last couple seasons, has really needed a over-the-top playmaker. Obviously, Nico had all the talent and ability to be that, but he was sharing receptions, targets with other talented guys like DPJ and Ronnie Bell, who's still around. But I think we've heard a lot of encouraging things from camp so far about how Cornelius Johnson is just putting it all together. We've heard how the offensive line is being a bruising downhill unit we thought they were going to be. And the running backs look as good as we thought they were going to be. So I think the opportunity is there for Cornelius Johnson to really be the vertical threat and the play action threat to take the top off the defense that would really round out this offense. And he has the recruiting profile of someone who's going to be that as an upperclassman. He was coming down to Michigan, Notre Dame. He had I want to say Texas, as well as Stanford. He's a huge academic kid. So he's got the measurables. We've heard people talk about him being one of the faster receivers, which for his profile would be, and given the other receivers on the roster, would be a really great thing if that's true. So I think he complements Bell and the other receivers really well. And if the things that we've heard from camp are true, and he's really kind of taking his game to the next level, I think he's going to have a big year, be Michigan's leading receiver, and kind of be the big-bodied deep threat that would really round this offense out and make it a great offense this year. On defense, I am going to take the lazy way out, one of the lazy ways out, and go with Dax Hill. Third year after being one of the highest rated recruits Michigan's ever gotten, one of the most exciting recruiting battles Michigan's ever been intertwined in with Alabama, flipping Dax back after he was once committed to Michigan, then committed to Alabama, and got him back on signing day a little before that. He's always looked to be everything that he was built to be athletically. You can see just the fluidity of movement, the violence coming downhill, and the run support, the ability to cover, the twitchiness, the ball skills. He's always looked the part, but between being a true freshman and then last year being the COVID year, we've never really seen kind of Dax Hill fully weaponized. And this year, we just so happened to change defensive schemes and hire a defensive coordinator who employs a scheme that is going to use a guy like Dax Hill in the best way possible. So I think the marriage of his ability and now being in his third year and now having a scheme that is going to use him as a safety, as a regular corner, as a nickelback, as a blitzer, and the fact that he's got a dedicated safety coach for the first time in almost 2 full seasons, I think we're going to see Dax Hill be close to the All-American hype that he had coming out of high school. He's certainly, I think, someone that can push for All-American status and potentially first-round draft pick status. And he's someone that Michigan needs to do the things that Mike McDonald wants to do. They need a guy like Dax Hill. We're going to see so many good slot receivers this year, whether it be from Penn State. Obviously, you're going to get Chris Olave in the final game. Indiana's going to throw out some great receivers. So to have a guy that can play the deep safety spot, that can come down and play man on a slot receiver, could go out and cover the team's best outside receiver across from Jamon Green if we need him to. You can bring him down, and that allows you to get another great player like RJ Moten on the field. I mean, he just does so much, and he's going to allow Mike McDonald to do so much of the things that he was doing in Baltimore here at Michigan. So I think this is kind of the year that Dax Hill really gets to touch his potential, and I think he's going to be kind of the keystone of this defense.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's an easy pick to make for Daxton to be the MVP of the defense, but this scheme is predicated on versatility, and Dax is like the definition of versatility. And like you said, he could play in the box, he could play single high, he could play at corner. So it just doesn't matter where you put him, he's gonna ball out. So I have no worries about Dax. He's in the running right now to be the second best safety in the draft, outside of Kyle Hamilton's obviously the best safety in the draft, but him and Brandon Joseph are kind of fighting for that second spot. And a great year from Dax, he can easily get that second spot. So hopefully we get that good year from him. He kind of struggled last year, but last year to me doesn't really count too much just because everybody struggled, and it was just such a wacky and wild year. There wasn't a fall or spring camp, right? I mean, so they didn't have too much time to prepare, and there were so many opt-outs and uncertainty about when they were going to play, if they were going to play at all. So I don't know. It was just too crazy last year. Matt, let's get to you on your offensive and defensive MVPs.
Yeah, for offense, I kind of went into it a little bit on the offensive depth chart preview, but I've got Hassan Haskins I just think he's a really good back, all around back. Does a lot of things well. I know a lot of the young running backs are getting hype, and I think they're going to contribute absolutely. But I think, a lot of times some of the overlooked guys are those guys in their third, fourth year, and with the offensive line they should be returning, and with Cade being inexperienced, I think they could rely heavily on the run game. They've got some good playmakers at receiver too, no doubt. But I think if Jim Harbaugh had his wishes, how his offense would be run, it'd be through the run game. And I think the addition of Matt Weiss will really help the run game and scheme. I think he's averaged over 5 yards a carry in each season that he's got each of the last 2 seasons. I think he could really approach 1,000 yards and around 8 touchdowns, and I think he could really be the bell cow back with some help from some of the other guys. But I think he's a talented player, and I think he's got a shot to get drafted. Be potentially the highest running back drafted we've had since, I think it'd be Mike Hart. So
yeah, wasn't Mike Hart like a 4th round pick?
Yeah.
So,
And I don't know that we've had one since even drafted at all since then. So I've been a big fan of Hassan since high school, and I think this is a year that he really breaks out. On defense, I've got the other obvious pick, I think, in Aiden Hutchinson. We had some preseason hype last year, and unfortunately with his injury, we weren't able to see that come together. My only concern with Aiden is, it was always kind of billed that he was the prototype 4-3 end. I'm a little worried that this new spot could be a little bit out of position for him, but I do think this new scheme as an outside linebacker, I think it highlights the pass rushers more than our previous scheme. As a Colts fan, I've heard a little bit of Kwity Paye analysis so far in camp, and one of the things they talked about is how Michigan tended to play their ends more inside than usual. Head up to a tackle as opposed to a wide 5 on the weak side. And I think giving Aiden that opportunity to do that already in college is really going to unleash his potential. And I think it's important for the defense. I think he's got to carry the front group, the front 5, if you want to call it that, or the front 4 if they end up playing some 4 down more. But I think he's super talented. You've heard all the stories about him, his work ethic, and wanting to be great. So I think he's got first-round potential, and I think he's going to show that this year in a full season.
Yeah, Aiden's a really great athlete. He's almost at the freak athlete level. Wasn't he number 2 on what's his name's list?
Yeah, Bruce Feldman. Yeah, he was number
Bruce
2.
Feldman's list. Yeah, he was number 2. So, that kind of goes to show you the kind of athlete he is. Real quick, Matt, you mentioned Haskins being the MVP on offense. The report came out the other day from Sam Webb on the Michigan Insider that this will be more of a run-heavy offense. A lot of people didn't take too well to that, but kind of give your analysis on why that is a good thing and what we should expect from the running game this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when people hear that, they go back down the 3 yards in a cloud of dust, and that's what they think. Being run heavy doesn't mean that you're just running inside zone all day long into a stacked box. Having an identity on offense is something that Michigan has actually severely lacked, especially last year. And with the young quarterback, and I was hoping this would be the case last year too, especially with the unknown throughout the summer. They've got a good stable of running backs. Leaning on the run game is a good thing. In fact, I think last year they got away from it too early at times. People get so worried about that being a conservative mindset and going away from speed and space, and it doesn't have to be. being good at running the ball can be done through speed and space, first off. And number two, can also help get some of our slots and receivers, the other playmakers out in space in one-on-one matchups, because if you're a good running team, they're going to have to load the box a little bit more, and it gets you better matchups on the outside. An emphasis on the run game with a relatively experienced offensive line, two coaches that in Harbaugh, I should say three coaches, Harbaugh, Mike Hart, and Matt Weiss, that know a thing or two about pretty good rushing attack. I just think it fits into the personnel. It helps Cade. It helps the team. I think that's what they should be doing. So, and I think that benefits Hassan Haskins.
It opens up so much more for the offense. So I guess it's just people thinking that it's going to end up being like the old Stanford offense that Harbaugh used to run, just a bunch of I formations. But even when he first got here, they ran a lot of the I formations. But this isn't like the old school archaic offense that people were thinking of whenever Sam put that out there. And like you said, they're not going to be running a bunch of inside zone. Like this isn't, USC's Graham Harrell offense. It's going to be a lot of different varieties. And I posted on the board the other day that Matt Weiss was brought on specifically not to be the quarterback coach. I mean, it'll help because he's going to help out with the running schemes for the quarterback, but it's mainly to bring over a lot of the Ravens running schemes that they ran over the past couple of years with Lamar Jackson and then J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Mark Ingram, and so forth.
Yeah, and both him and Harbaugh working, with Greg Roman, exactly. Obviously he's had very athletic quarterbacks in the NFL when he's been a coordinator, but that guy is one of the most creative mismatch, and Harbaugh has been too. I mean, Harbaugh was here in the first couple of years using motion, using shifts to create running lanes and mismatches. We'll be more spread out now than what we were early in Harbaugh, but still using those things to get your speed and space. That can happen in the run game too. Creating light boxes with motion, or stacked one side or the other with motion, can create speed and space. And speed and space is one-on-one matchups in the open field. And that you can very much do that. I mentioned Oregon during the Chip Kelly days. I mean, you're talking 4 wide receivers and still running the ball 65% of the time.
Yeah. That's what Oklahoma does now.
Yeah. Oklahoma's counter play is just beautiful.
Oklahoma lives off
with Eric Gray. Now that he's there,
yeah, and it's what they did with Ramondre Stevenson. It's what they were running with, tearing teams up with Kyler Murray, running reads off of their base run plays. I mean, Oklahoma is a running offense that they terrify teams because they make you decide between covering their 4 All-American wide receivers or throwing enough guys in the box to stop their great offensive line. I mean, they've got the best offensive line coach in the country in Bill Bedenbaugh. They recruit studs on the O-line every cycle, and then they run the ball 60% of the time and make the playoffs most years. Yep. But nobody thinks about Oklahoma as a 3 yards in a cloud of dust team, but they are a run-first offense. And to preview our playoff talk later in the episode, we're going to talk about at least 3 programs, I think, between the 3 of our playoff picks who are run first offenses, that the stereotype of their offense or the perception might not be that they're a running attack, but the thing these teams want to do the most is run the ball, and they open up their passing game, which they're all known for having good passing games through having a great running game.
A perfect example of this is Ole Miss.
Yeah. Yep.
They're literally a run-first offense. Jerry Ely, John Rice Plumlee, now that he switched positions, I mean, I don't think people realize like how run-heavy that offense is.
Yeah, I don't know how many college football fans, if you ask them walking down the street, would guess that Ole Miss runs the ball like 61, 62% of the time.
I think it was 65% last year, and that's
Yeah.
with a stud quarterback.
Yep.
So I mean, look, we talked about this the other day, guys. We have our own little group messages. If you don't know like in depth about football, it's okay. Like there's some stuff I don't know about, and I don't claim to know about it, and it's okay if you don't know. It's fine. But a lot of this like false claiming and just putting out false information about this kind of stuff, especially when it comes to a run heavy offense. I compared it to the 2011 offense that Harbaugh had in San Francisco when Alex Smith was the quarterback. He had Frank Gore, he had Kendall Hunter. He had some pretty good receivers, a really stout, big offensive line, and they ran the ball a lot. But they also got involved in the passing game really good. Now I think Cade's gonna end up throwing the ball a lot more, obviously, than Alex Smith will. But uh, it's not a bad thing to have a run heavy offense. I mean, that team went 13-3 that year. So I don't know. It was just disappointing to see that, but it wasn't surprising either.
That's typical late off season.
It's like they were begging for content, and content gets dropped, and then they don't like the content that's dropped. So it's just like, what the hell? Come on, guys! Like seriously, it's ridiculous. Anyways, so speaking of Cade, as we move on to my picks for MVP on offense and defense, I'm going to start out with offense. I'm going to go with Cade. Reason being is I think the running game is going to open up so many different avenues for Cade. I think the reports about the wide receivers being the best position group on offense so far is really encouraging. Kind of surprising, to be honest, with the talent that we have on, the offensive line, the running back, even the quarterback room with J.J. McCarthy and Alan Bowman as a second and third string. But with Cade leading the way, you've got guys like Dalen Baldwin making strides in the wide receiver room. Ronnie Bell, obviously, you know what you're going to get from him. Cornelius Johnson's apparently the best wide receiver of the group right now, which is huge development. You got Mike Samer still, who's a veteran at the slot, continues to improve each year. You've got A.J. Henning, in his second year. Every time he touched the ball last year, it was just electric. He just looked great with the ball in his hands, so I expect him to get the ball more. Then you even got the running backs coming out the backfield. They can catch passes. Haskins is an underrated pass catcher. We know what Quorum can do as a pass catcher. Even Donovan Edwards, we saw what he can do as a pass catcher in high school. Then you get the tight ends. Hopefully Eric All gets rid of his jitters in game, catching the ball, because he's got a lot of drop passes over the past couple of years. Schoonmaker is apparently making some really good strides at tight end, so it'll be interesting to see from that tight end group how they'll help Cade. But that's the reason why he'll be my offensive MVP. I mean, he's accurate. He's got a pretty good arm. He doesn't make too many mistakes. There's not much else you can ask for from a quarterback. As far as the defensive side of the ball, I'm going to go with Jamon Green. He's the top cornerback that Michigan has. Super, super athletic. 6'2", 185, 190. He's gotten some buzz, around draft circles as a possible day 2 prospect if he has another great year like he did last year. I think, this scheme change, like for the rest of the defense and the rest of the personnel on the defense, I think it'll be huge for a guy like Green. I think it fits him perfectly. I think he'll have at least Daxton Hill as, at worst, as the cornerback 2, which is a great thing. I have huge hopes for DJ Turner because I really liked his film out of high school too. As long as he can stay healthy, I think he'll be great on the other side. But with Green, he's got fluid hips, good athlete, long. He looked really good last year. I expect him to have an even better year this year in this new scheme. So that's my pick for MVP. I know it was easy to go with Dax and Hutchinson like Matt and Contown did, but I'm gonna challenge myself a little bit and go with Jamon Green instead.
Yeah, and I think on Green, and we talked about this a little bit before the show regarding Mozzie Smith, but the importance of Green locking down one cornerback job, I don't think that can be understated. obviously everyone knows cornerback was a weak spot last year. There's still a lot of question going into this year. And you can't have question at both spots. I mean, him locking down the number one corner, and then letting the other guys battle it out for the number two. Dax will likely be in the nickel role. But him locking down the number one corner could be huge for this defense. And if you remember from his high school tape, he, because of his length and things like that, he was, projected a lot as a good press man corner, a previous scheme fit for what Michigan ran before. But if you remember from his high school tape, he had a lot of plays in zone coverage where that was kind of where he did his playmaking in terms of the interceptions, things like that. Despite being touted as a press man guy coming out, I think, like you said, I think the scheme kind of benefits him.
100% agree.
I think it's if he is truly MVP level of the defense, that is huge for this defense.
Yeah, I think he has all the ability in the world, and like you brought up, the scheme change is huge for him. So, I have all the faith in Jamon and him thriving this year, and it'll be super important because if he struggles for some reason, and Mozzie Smith struggles up the middle, Michigan's in for a long year on defense. They better hope that they can put up 50, 60 points on offense every game, which is a lot to ask. So
Green seems to me like exactly the type of defensive back Clinkscale would have taken at Kentucky and turned into an NFL draft pick. A 6 foot plus guy. Yeah, long, kind of like borderline 3-4 star guy. He's got good offers, but wasn't a huge recruit. And Klink would take him, and 4 years later, he'd be a mid-round draft pick, all SEC type. So I think he's going to do, like you guys already said, I think he's going to do great with the scheme change, and Coach Clinkscale is going to love having him, and I think he's going to benefit from what Clinkscale brings to the table too. So I think it's a perfect situation for what should be his last year here.
Agreed.